is Looney, and welcome back to another ASMR video. I have a little bit of a funky setup going on here, but today I'm going to be going through the process of making mead, which, if you guys don't know, is a sort of honey wine. I'll probably just take you through a little bit of the process and tap on some of the items and stuff here. And then I'll probably end up having to cut out some of the parts that are a little bit lengthier and probably won't be as good of ASMR. Yeah. Like I said, the setup's kind of weird. I'm probably going to need to stand up at some points, but I figured having the mic next to the items and getting good sounds that way was more important than you guys seeing my face. So I hope you guys enjoy. So first here we have the honey. Now for the gallon carboy that I'm using, it recommends like 2 to 3 pounds, but the way the process works is the more honey you add and the more sugar content that the mixture has at the beginning, after adding yeast and yeast nutrient, the yeast will eat up the sugar and ferment it and turn it into alcohol. So the more sugar you have, the more potential you have to raise your ABV, which I actually don't know what alcohol by volume. I think that's right. Anyways, the percentage of alcohol that it is. So essentially the sugar is the fuel, and the product is alcohol, and the yeast is what creates the product. Now with that, the yeast has to stay in, some yeast stay in a certain environment, but if you just have it in like a fairly cool environment, as long as it's not too hot or too cold, you're probably fine. Some yeast are more particular in the environment that they thrive in. Generally, though, the process is likely to happen regardless, unless you screw something up. But the only risks are like off flavors, which is basically like if the yeast gets excited too fast, just like me for real, then it will create like nasty flavors because the process happened a little too fast. But yeah, so I should also just say, by no means am I an expert. I have only made one batch, and I decided to use blackberries, and it turned out alright. I ended up adding some like white grape juice to dilute it because it tasted quite strong, and then you sweeten it as well after the fact, because once the yeast eats up all the sugar, it's all converted into alcohol, and so it ends up being very dry and having no sweetness because literally all the sugar was sucked out of it. So you have to back sweeten, and I used some sugar, just some white sugar, but you can use whatever. I got a little carried away there, kind of talking about the whole process after just talking about the honey. But let's take the cap off this honey and get ready to put it in the carboy. Some nice lid sounds here. Screw it back on. Now screw it off. I bet you this will make good gripping sounds. I think usually like plastics and glass. grabbed it a little too hard. Whoops. This is Nature Nate's Honey Company, a mission-driven company that gives back, apparently. What do they do, like charity? Okay. This is 100% pure, organic, raw, and unfiltered honey. Okay. Yeah, so the other thing about the honey is like, I really don't think it matters because it's mostly about the sugar, but what makes mead compared to other alcohols is that it's a honey wine. So typically if you get a nicer, honey, then you're going to have a nicer tasting product at the end. But at the end of the day, it's still going to make alcohol. So it doesn't really matter, and honey can get kind of expensive. But anyway, I just bought this from Sam's Club because I'm just going to use this one, what do you even call this, jug? I don't know. This one bottle of honey in this batch, and it's, I think, a little over 2 pounds. But like I said, for a gallon batch, you can use up to 3 pounds of honey. Now, if you really want to get into it, I would definitely recommend looking up a recipe. Don't listen to what I'm saying. I'm just going based off of what I did before, and it worked out all right. But I'm not saying that that's the best way to do it. So anyway, let's pour this honey in. Whoa. Let's see if we can. Hold on. Oh. Stop it for a second, okay. See if we can hear any of these sounds. Actually, hear a little bit of the glugging there. Now, shucks, let me grab a spoon real quick. So you add some of the honey first, and then the water, and then the honey, and then the water, just because it allows it to mix a little bit easier than adding all the honey in at once. Now, let me move this back a little bit so I can get closer to the mic. What they recommend is using spring water because of its like minerals and stuff. And they say that it adds to the flavor. But also, I think it's just good to have like a sealed water because, and I guess I didn't mention that, but you should have all your equipment clean because in this fermentation it's sealed up for weeks. So, you don't want bacteria and stuff to develop in there and then end up drinking it because that's a no-go. So, yeah, sealed water because you know that it's not going to be contaminated or anything. Oh, geez, that wasn't a very pleasant noise. Some more lid noises. Let's see if we can get some good glugging noises here. What I'm just gonna do is I'll come back when I have all the honey and water added. So I'll use some editing magic and I'll be right back. So now that my mixture is all combined together, we're gonna add the berry of choice. So in that case today it is blueberries this time around. So I learned a couple things last time. It did taste like blackberry on my last batch, but the problem is blackberries are kind of tart to begin with, and so I ended up having to sweeten it a bunch with other juices, and then by the time I got to the end of it, it still tastes good, you know. But could you really tell that it was blackberry if I didn't tell you? Probably not. So first off, that was probably a mistake using blackberries. But also I just used fresh blackberries and I kind of muddled them, which ended up making a lot more muck, which is not a big deal because you end up having to transfer it into a different jar. Anyway, but the problem with it is that the flavors didn't diffuse as well either. So some recommend to actually use frozen fruit because when it re-thaws, you kind of get some of the juices a little bit, so it's almost like juiced fruit, and it helps infuse the flavor of whatever berry you're using into the mead. So I have frozen blueberries here. It's just Sam's Club Members Mark. It's just a big old bag of them. Now, in terms of the quantity, there's not really a specified amount. Just whatever you feel will add enough flavor to the batch. In most cases, the berries, the sugar content you get from them isn't really going to contribute to the resulting ABV, so it's not a big deal. It's not like if you add more sugar, you're going to end up having more potential to have a higher percentage of alcohol or anything. So it makes a very minimal impact. So let's add some blueberries. I might cut this out because it's probably not going to be a pleasant noise when they're all dropping in, but yeah. So as you can tell now, I added the blueberries in, guys. I'm really excited because already this smells really good with the honey and the blueberries in. Yeah, definitely there's literally juice that poured out as I was dumping some of them in, so I'm hoping this will turn out with a lot better of a flavor, and I think this time I'll probably just make it not as strong of an alcohol because last time I had to dilute it anyway, and I feel like it just kind of took away from the flavor of it, or the natural flavor of what the meat was supposed to taste like. So yeah, I'll add a little bit more water to top it off, and then what we'll do next is probably take a gravity reading. So now what I have here, I had to do it off camera. It has a nice purple color. Eventually it'll probably clear out into a nice purple color. But when you're looking at the carboy right now, it's pretty dark. And that's because all the honey and all the juices and stuff. But eventually, I think it'll turn a pretty color. But anyway, what I did was I siphoned out a sample here into this chemistry. That's not is it a graduated cylinder? Oh gosh, my mom would be so upset. Anyway, I took a sample out into here and using this hydrometer, and essentially what it does is it takes a gravity reading, so it floats at different heights because of the sugar content that's in the water, and then it marks off, based on how much sugar in there and how much it's floating in and out of the water. There's markings along it here that indicate the gravity reading, and then you use that reading initially, and then you take a reading after it's fermented to see how much sugar is in it then, and then you can figure out how much alcohol it's going to be. So I need to write down what this reading is because I'm going to need it and the final writing to figure out how much approximately alcohol is in here. So it's reading just at about 1.1. Let me let it settle and I'll read it one more time just to be sure. We'll call it 1.1. gosh, I think it's the, so the final reading will read a smaller number than this, so the higher the number is, the more sugar content is within the sample. So, it's the initial reading minus the final reading times 135, and that will give you your ABV percentage. So, I might end up getting the same amount of alcohol as last time, but you can always stop it from fermenting early. Now I'm doing this today because I'm going on a trip over the weekend, so it's Tuesday now, and when I'm back from my trip it'll be Sunday night. So I'm also going to record a video tomorrow, perhaps before I leave, so I can still maybe bring you guys to this week. Otherwise it might just be this video for this week. But yeah, so we can dump the sample back in here, and now that we have the number recorded, and move on to the final step. So now for the final and probably least exciting step. What I have here in this bowl is the yeast, and what I did differently this time that I was a little scared and had sort of a mishap on last time was that I just added the dry yeast straight into the mixture, which isn't a bad thing. It just took a while for the yeast to start actually fermenting, and it took a little longer than it was supposed to. It should start within 24 to 48 hours, and it didn't start at until I think maybe the 4th morning after I had done it. So that was a little concerning. But the other problem that I didn't realize is that it's kind of tricky. So as you can tell here, there's a bunch of bubbles, and that is because at the very beginning of fermentation, the oxygen is good for the yeast. It helps it kickstart, but once it has started its fermentation process, the oxygen can add off flavors if it's stirred around during the middle of fermentation. So kind of confusing, but so that's what I mean to do. I just shook this thing around, got it a little aerated before I add the yeast, and let's go ahead and dump it in. Mix it around a little bit afterwards, but the other thing is that I mixed the yeast. Like I said, I added it just dry before, but what I did this time was that I mixed the yeast this time into some warmer water just to help it get itself started and everything. And then over here, this brothy looking mixture is yeast nutrient. It's Fermade O. There's several different kinds of yeast nutrients you can use, but yeast is alive and it needs food and nutrients. So this helps it ferment properly and just stably as well. So we'll add that in and we'll give it a stir. Now we'll add the lid on and add that sounds. And then we'll add the airlock. Now the way this little thing works, I actually need to fill it with a little bit of water. It's pretty simple. It just stubs inside of here, and you fill it with a certain amount of water, and basically just creates a seal made of water. So right now this is the only opening, and then once this is filled with water, then it creates a seal. But this tube is stubbed all the way up, so you don't fill the water past that line, because then the water would dump into the mixture, and that's not what we want. So yeah, what I'm going to do is add a little bit of water, and it creates that seal, and then eventually you'll start to see bubbles here, and you'll know for sure when it started, because this little stopper thing that's floating on there will actually puff all the way up and plop, and then all the bubbles will build up and it'll plop, this time we see that happening earlier on, and it's not so delayed. And I'm hoping that we'll get a better flavor out of this as well. But yeah, let me fill this with some water and we'll seal it up. Anyway, this video is going to require a lot of editing, but I sealed this thing up. And now it just sits for, it all depends on what kind of percentage you want to get it to. And you can, open it at random points and take readings, but it really makes sense to definitely leave it probably for the first 2 weeks or so. And then, once I see that it's going for about 2 weeks, I'll take it out and take a reading and see if it's at the level I want it to be. I'm not sure if I want it to get as strong as it did before, even though technically it has the potential to. And that's the other thing I didn't mention. So technically the kind of yeast you use as well can have an impact on the flavor, but from what I've read, it doesn't make that huge of a difference. But I know they make some yeasts that are specifically for wine. But in this case, I literally just use some Fleshman spread yeast, and that should work just fine. But each of them also has a different tolerance for what ABV they can handle. So some of them will eat up more sugars than others. But I've been told that Fleshman's bread yeast can get up to about 10 to 12% ABV, which is probably right in the range that I wanted at anyway. And I don't really need it any higher for this batch based on the last one. So I have high hopes for this one. And what I'm going to do is probably set it in a cooler and leave it in my room upstairs, or maybe if it's too hot up there, I might leave it down in the basement or something. Let me know if you guys are interested in checking back in and getting the results. But yeah, I really hope for this. I'm excited. I know this wasn't the best. I don't know, I thought it would be a fun ASMR video. It was something I was planning on doing anyway, and I was pretty tired tonight after work this morning, and then I hit back in triceps today at the gym, so I got back and I ate, and I had Pan Express, so I just kind of crashed after all those carbs and salt, and but I finally got to recording, and I really enjoy making these videos, and hopefully this is, it's a cool video, but not exactly your typical ASMR video, just because, probably partly for a reason, because it's kind of hard to get good sounds throughout the whole time. A lot of this is just going to be rambles, because not a lot of these items make good noises, and I'm kind of scuffling around doing stuff, so it's making kind of harsh noises. But let's see if we can get some. Some gripping noises there. Anyway, guys, yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. It's going to take a lot of editing, probably. Yeah, this video is 45 minutes long that I'm taking, but it'll probably end up being like a, 20, 30-minute video or something. We'll see. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please like the video, comment if you liked it or anything, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.